it's Filippa. Today we're making this dress inspired by this dress, but I didn't have enough fabric to make it as long or as wide. Anyways, so I have good news and bad news. Bad news first. Okay, so in order to make the pattern the way I did, you will need a block pattern or a sloper. Also, more bad news. I don't have a video on how to make one. However, good news. There are several really great videos on YouTube on how to make these, so I will leave some links in the description. Yeah, so anyways, I made a dress and here's how to do it. Firstly, here are the materials I used. For the outer fabric, I found this big floral cotton fabric in a charity shop. For the inner lining, I used one side of a thrifted duvet cover. Then for some structure in the bodice, I bought a thin, bit stretchy iron-on interfacing. To get inside the dress, I used a 40cm long regular zipper, whatever regular means, like non-invisible. And to pimp up this bitch, I used this long strip of 8cm wide lace. Now let's make this pattern. Start off by tracing your block or sloper. You don't actually have to trace the entire top, you can skip the shoulder, but you want to mark the top, like the neckline, as well as include the darts. Also, I just want to apologize for the awful autofocus. I wasn't aware it would be doing this crap the entire video. I am very annoyed and very sorry. Then you measure down from the original neckline to where you want the top of the bodice and your new neckline to be. I made it 8cm lower to start off with, and like I was happy with that, so yeah, 8cm final. Then draw a 90-degree line from that mark towards the side. To make it more fitted, I made the shoulder dart 1cm wider. And I took it in and up 1cm in the side. Then from that point, draw a straight line to the new dart leg. I measured the waist dart and essentially moved it to the right of the right dart leg. So I measured it and made a mark 3cm to the right. I didn't actually want any darts and instead made a seam down the middle. So really what we did is take in 3cm. Now decide how much shorter you want the bodice to be. I made mine 10cm shorter, which was essentially to my waist. Then draw a 90-degree line from the point to the dart. Then measure the dart here and again move it to the right. Then draw a line from this point, connecting it to the shoulder dart and bust line. Then I just went in and made the seam a bit more rounded, you know, because the boob is in a freaking cone and it will be easier to sew. I just filled in the two pattern pieces in with a pen so that you can see how to trace them, and I suggest you do as well so that you don't get it twisted, but I'm not the boss of you. Now for the back, go ahead and trace it. You only need up to like however wide you want it basically. The side obviously has to be as high as the side of the front piece, so I made it 1cm higher but made it 2cm shorter by the fold or middle. Like the front piece, I also took it in 1cm in the side. Then I drew a line straight up from the middle of the waist dart and measured 0.5 cm on each side. And this is the seam. If you want, you can keep the dart and keep it as one pattern piece instead. Then I traced them onto a clean pattern paper, calling them B1 and B2 as to not confuse them, but I still did a bunch of times. Better to call them center back and side back or something like that. Also, it's a good idea to make some markings at the top of each piece so that you know which pieces go together and where, because once you cut them out on your fabric, it easily gets mixed up, at least with a scatterbrain like mine. Then I just checked all the pattern pieces to see that the seams fit together nicely. I used a pin and a red pen. I don't feel like explaining this part, so just observe please. I also added seam allowances as follows. Then I just measured down 10 centimeters from the top of each pattern piece to make a pattern for the ruffle. Now you can either make it this way, or you can save a lot of time and effort and sanity and just make a rectangle piece as long as you wish it to be. If you want to gather it, which I think you do, it should be at least 20 to 30 centimeters longer than the actual measurement around the top of the bodice. My idea was that if you did it this very intricate way, you would get the shape better. However, as you will see soon from the mock-up I quickly made to see how it would look, it wasn't that flattering and I had to make adjustments, and in the end it didn't end up that far from just a rectangle piece. Which is not to say you can skip making a mock-up part and it will be perfect if you make a rectangle. I still think you should, and I think adjustments will be needed, but at least you've saved yourself some time and will to live. So in order to make it longer for gathering, I cut it into 4 sections and then taped more paper onto it and measured 6 centimeters to each, which I calculated to make it twice as big. And remember, it's to be cut out on a fold, so the amount added was actually 48 centimeters. Okay, so I've made a mock-up, and please don't mind this atrocious fabric. It's an old duvet cover my grandma somehow tricked me into bringing into this house. So it fits pretty well. I like the tightness up here. I don't want it to be too tight, but I want to take it in a few centimeters at the bottom here. So obviously I'm just going to pin it in on both sides equally, and then I can measure it, take it off and change the pattern, and then cut it out on my real fabric. Okay, so now I've gathered the ruffle part and I just pinned it to the top of the bodice, and I didn't really like the length of these two together, so I pinned the lace a bit above where this ends. So I'm just going to take away this much from the pattern, and as well as a little bit of the lace, and I'll end up with kind of this length, which I'm pretty happy about. And now obviously you can check if the ruffle has a nice shape. I think this might be a bit too low for me, so I might just look at the pattern and see what I want to change, and then I'll cut it out on the real fabric. Yeah, and so I made said alterations. I did my best to measure the markings and then divided it equally to each side, and altered the patterns and seam allowance. And just again very quickly check the seams that they fit seamlessly. Finally, it was time to cut it out on the real fabric. Remember to fit the patterns with the grain line. Don't forget the marks, and please use a pen that goes away in the wash or over time. I had this friend that she never did. Okay, anyways. Then I cut out all the pieces again, this time on the duvet cover for the lining. And once again on the interfacing. Then I ripped and cut the last bit of the fabric into a rectangle and cut it into 2 skirt pieces. Then I realized I didn't have to do that since my zipper is in the back and I could have just used one piece, but oh well. Oh yeah. So instead I cut one of the skirt pieces down the middle once again, making 1 front piece and 2 back pieces, and put it on the top of the duvet cover to trace for the inner skirt. I wanted to see what it would look like if this skirt was sticking out, but it was hideous, so ignore the fact that I cut it too long. I actually wanted it quite a bit shorter than the outer skirt in the end, so you can cut it out about 10 centimeters shorter or however much you like. So then I ironed on the interfacing onto their respective pieces, placing a cloth or scrap piece on top to make sure I don't accidentally get glue on the iron or on the fabric. I iron about 8 seconds on each spot, but whatever works for you and your iron. Also, striking while the iron is hot, literally, I folded in each side of the inner skirt and about half a centimeter because I wanted a slit at the bottom of the zipper to the floor. So then you stitch together each bodice one at a time. Right sides together. And remember to not stitch the 2 center back pieces together, as our zipper is going here. So then I sewed and I sewed and I sewed and I sewed. Finally, onto the, shall we say, boob curved pieces. You can cut little snippets into the curve to allow it to truly be curved and not be so conformed and like stuffy, and it will be easier to iron out and shape, and just trust me. Now to the skirt, I serged each side of the 2 skirt pieces. If you don't have a serger, who does? Me, that's who. If you don't have one, you can just zigzag your edges to make sure they don't fray, then pin and sew them together down one side. Then I just sewed the lace onto the ruffle/rectangle. I did stupid here though. If you had folded it in once before attaching the lace, then you could have folded it over once again and have a doubled hem that's super nice and doesn't fray, but naive little me didn't think it was gonna be such a big problem, and I mean, it's not that bad, it's just annoying having to snip off threads every now and then. Well, at least I could fold over both ends over twice. Then along the entire top of the ruffle, I sewed 2 stitches with the longest stitch length for gathering. Now kindly repeat this for the top of outer and inner skirt. To gather, find the 2 bottom threads. I used to always pull the top threads, which defo works, but I found the bottom ones are a bit stiffer and not as slidey, which I like. Anyways, find them, pull them, not too aggressively, but like this is so tedious, so I say just go for it. For reference of how much to gather, place the bodice on top, and when they look about the same, start pinning at either end or pin 2 seams together. Make sure you really match all seams up, don't be doing it haphazardly, it will not look professional and you will be kicking yourself for it later. Then I also gathered and pinned the ruffle to the top of the bodice, both right sides facing up. Then I sewed everything in place with a regular straight stitch. Now before stitching the inner layer with the outer layer, I made the 2 straps. I use my bias binding foot. To use a bias binding foot, you need to cut the fabric on the bias diagonal to the grain of the fabric because it has more stretch. So on the very small piece I had left on the diagonal, I cut out as long a strip as possible and as wide as instructed by the bias binding foot I bought online. Like, the foot didn't tell me, like there was a little instruction paper. Anyway. There are several different versions of a foot like this, and this is probably not the best, but it gets the job done, and so did I. So after cutting out at least 5 pieces, 2 for each straps to be tied and adjusted, and 1 for testing the foot a bit. Then I pre-pressed the side seams for the zipper, and iron hot in hand, I also ironed the little straps to be a bit flat, but honestly it didn't do much. Now joining these 2 layers in holy material money, I pinned them right sides together along the top of the bodice. Now by the very end, aka sides to be seams, I placed the inner layer slightly shorter than the other. This is because the outer layer will stick out and cover the zipper teeth, while the inner layer will be sewn onto the zipper tape a few millimeters away from the zipper teeth so that it doesn't get stuck. And we're really not talking much here, just a few millimeters, definitely not more than 5, or you might not sew into both layers, which happened to me. So trust me on this. I was either lazy or too ugly to film this, but I also tried the muslin on again and decided where to place the straps front and back. So then I measured and marked it out on the actual dress, and shoved the little worms in there and pinned and sewed it all in place. Then I pinned the zipper facing up between the inner and outer layer. I tried placing the outer layer so that enough fabric was exactly covering the teeth evenly on each side. And again, the inner layer a few millimeters away from the teeth. Make sure to match up the 2 bodice meets skirt seams. I had to redo it so many times and it still didn't come out perfect, and I just gave up because I was traveling to the UK in literally a day. So then I sewed it in place with my ever so not at all optimal zipper foot. I would like to blame the sucky zipper foot for the wobbly ass stitch. Now to close up the seam of the outer layer, I sewed the seam from the bottom of the skirt up to a few centimeters above where the zipper would end.
My search led me to the study of the spiritual forces with which all of us are blessed. And it was in this field that I came upon a clue. I want to describe my discovery in the simplest terms possible, because it will reveal to you why it is true that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
And to fixate the zipper, I just turn right around from the left side of the zipper to the right, like so.
Your mind's power to attract these undesirable circumstances, because it is true that whatever your mind feeds upon, your mind attracts to you. Now you see.
And like I said, the inner layer was accidentally neglected, so I went back into the stitch and sewed the zipper in place.
With a clear picture in your mind of precisely what you want to do.
Moving on to hemming the bottom of the skirt. Since I very conveniently placed the selvage at the very bottom, I only had to fold it over once since the selvage does not fray. I did this using my iron for a neat even edge. I simply folded it right where the selvage, like tiny little dot holes, ended, which was about 1 centimeter. Then I lazily folded the hem of the inner layer over twice as I sewed, about half a centimeter each time. However, my dumbass folded it over to the wrong side, so the edge of it and bottom thread is facing outwards, but it is on the inside of the dress and I can't be bothered. On the inner layer I made a slit, a fancy way of saying I left the skirt open from the zipper down. This is because the inner layer was slimmer and I don't want this flowy dress to be constrained. I want my legs to be out and about. So I had to double hem this as well and fold it in at the corners. And so finally we are finished. Time to degrade myself in public. I mean photo shoot!
What am I supposed to be doing? Oh, that's cute. Oh, that's cute.